Gene Roddenberry once suggested that there were initially 6 Galaxy-class starships built. This does not preclude the building in-universe of more later, but only puts on the proverbial table the idea of an initial batch of 6 starships. In this video, we will attempt to identify this initial 6. When Star Trek The Next Generation arrived on British television in 1990, it still seemed a shaky proposition. There had been talk and rumour from across the North Atlantic of a new and successful Star Trek and a new and sleek Enterprise. But surely nothing could replace the classic series. And yet, this new crew and this new ship had proved a mainstream hit. And so, when it premiered as part of the BBC Two September schedule, those of us on this side of the Great Grey Water got to see it for ourselves. Let us look at this Cadillac of the stars, and then indulge in listing the known Galaxy-class ships. And then finally, we will consider the Syracuse question. For some of us, this is our Enterprise. Andrew Probert had designed her. She had a crisp and clean design, and was elegant and futuristic. The interiors were clean and brightly lit. This surely was the future, one of hope and optimism, of comfortable chairs and potted plants. Over half a kilometre wide and well over half a kilometre in length, 42 decks, a complement of 1,000 people, including families, holodecks, an oval saucer, a cobra-headed dorsal, an eye-shaped navigational deflector and surrounds, a luxury liner indeed, a cosmic Cadillac, but lacking the built-in obsolescence. The Star Trek The Next Generation technical manual follows Roddenberry's suggestion of 6 initial ships, to be followed by a further 6. We will divide these 12 into Batch 1 and Batch 2. In universe, the Galaxy class were developed over a 20-year period, beginning in 2343, only a year after the loss of the Enterprise C. Such a lengthy period of development for a capital ship is not unrealistic. The designation Galaxy class suggests the leader of the class was called the Galaxy, so we have our first named ship, the USS Galaxy, launched in 2356 and commissioned a year later. The second of the class, the Yamato, exploded in our faces, quite literally, in the TNG second season episode Contagion, set in 2364. A region in Japan, Yamato in the Star Trek context was named for the Second World War battleship. The third ship, the Enterprise, the hero ship, was launched in 2358 and officially commissioned on the 4th of October 2363, which is curious given the class leader, the aforementioned Galaxy, seems to have only needed 1 year between launch and commissioning, according to the TNG technical manual. We were introduced to the Odyssey in the DS9 second season episode The Jem'Hadar, set in 2370, during which the ship was destroyed. It is an excellent name for a starship, the title of one of 2 contributions by Homer to the epic cycle, and a word that has become synonymous with long voyages and travel. Another DS9 alumni was the Venture, which first appears in Way of the Warrior, set in 2372. Venture is a synonym for the word Enterprise. She had her name printed on the underside of the saucer, and there were longitudinal strips along the top of the nacelles. We could call the Venture a Batch 2 Galaxy-class ship, but perhaps she was a Galaxy 1 with a unique modification. As the TNG technical manual points out, the Galaxy class was not a static design. A third named Galaxy in DS9 was the Magellan, which may be seen in Sacrifice of Angels, set in 2374. She was named after the explorer Ferdinand Magellan. a USS Magellan is mentioned in Starship Mine, a TNG 6th season episode which would put it in 2369. Admittedly, the episode writer might have had another ship design in mind, possibly a Constellation class, but the evidence in DS9 is enough to suppose that this was a Galaxy-class ship. The Challenger appeared in 2 Voyager episodes, Timeless, 5th season, and Endgame, 7th season. Her first appearance was in an alternate future under the command of Geordi LaForge, but her second appearance, set in 2377, confirmed her earlier existence. Challenger is a good name for one of these starships, honouring not only the lost space shuttle, but also the 19th century British survey ship HMS Challenger, for which the Challenger Deep was named. Its meaning is very much in keeping with the stated philosophy of Star Trek. One drawback is a pre-existing Challenger class, an example of which appeared as a victim of the Battle of Wolf 359 in The Best of Both Worlds, set a decade before Endgame. The class leader might well have been decommissioned by 2367, but it seems too soon in the Star Trek timeline to have passed the name on to a newer galaxy if we are to consider the Challenger one of the initial Batch 1 ships. Also, like the Venture, her name can be seen on the underside of the saucer, so perhaps she was Batch 2. By the time of Voyager's return and the end of the Dominion War, a second batch of 6 Galaxy-class ships were most likely available, hence the appearance of many in DS9 episodes such as Favour the Bold, and the talk of Galaxy Wings. It's a funny thing, but over the course of 3 seasons of the classic series, 6 feature films, 7 seasons of TNG, 7 of DS9, 7 of Voyager, 4 of Enterprise, and the 4 TNG films, there does not seem to be a starship called Discovery. Granted, the name does briefly appear on a display in one TNG episode, but we had to wait until Secret Hideout's Star Trek Discovery before a ship bearing the name appeared. This is curious given the name's pedigree, which includes the American Space Shuttle Discovery and Scott's Antarctic expedition ship the Discovery, now a museum ship in Dundee. The name also has science fiction credentials, due to its use in 2001: A Space Odyssey. With so much quality history behind the name, a USS Discovery, NCC 72001, might be a good nomination for a 6th galaxy. However, to quote a little green character from a different science fiction IP, there is another. The 3rd season of Star Trek Picard resurrected the Enterprise D, or rather her saucer, which we had last seen crash-landed in the forests of Viridian 3. Whichever side of the canonical fence you sit concerning modern Trek, the return of the Enterprise D was still a welcome sight, although technically what we see is, in-universe, the original saucer mated with the star drive section of another Galaxy-class ship, namely the Syracuse. In museum terms, what we see here is a restoration. You see, there is conservation and there is restoration. The first preserves what has survived without modern addition, whilst the second restores the artifact to what is believed to be its original state, as accurately as records and investigation allows. 2 salvaged warships, now snug in their museums, illustrate these distinctions. The 16th century English warship Mary Rose is an example of conservation, whilst the 17th century Swedish warship Vasa is an example of restoration. In conservation terms, the Enterprise D at the Fleet Museum should be only a saucer, possibly even a bridgeless saucer, as the bridge module is different than the one in Star Trek Generations. The most accurate restoration demands that the Syracuse's star drive section be as close to that of the original as practicable, and as the Enterprise D was a Batch 1, then, assuming Geordi LaForge had his ideal pick, the Syracuse must be a Batch 1 as well. In the real world though, things are seldom so ideal, and there is always the question of what is available. So, which were the initial 6 Galaxy-class starships? Certainly, we have the Galaxy, the Yamato, the Enterprise and the Odyssey. If the Magellan of Starship Mine is a Galaxy, then 2369 is early enough for us to include her, so that's 5. It is questionable to suppose painting the ship's name under the saucer to be a sure sign of a Batch 2, so we cannot discount the Challenger as our 6th ship, even if she does not appear until 2377, a good 14 years after Farpoint, by which time at least a few of the second batch of Galaxies would have been commissioned. The Venture we can consider a Batch 2, or a variant, but if not the Challenger or the Magellan, then the Syracuse, with her remarkably low hull registry, might well do, assuming Geordie LaForge and his museum staff are truly professional. But this does raise the question, why call one of your brand new capital ships Syracuse when you could have christened her Discovery, or indeed Columbia? Is Syracuse an illustrious ship name? Has it nautical and or exploratory history? Imagine having a new class of, say, battleships, and naming them the Illustrious, the Indomitable, the Invincible, and the Penny Come Quick. It would be very odd to name one of your premier vessels after a random location. And yes, Penny Come Quick is the name of an actual village. But who knows? This is a Star Trek future. They do things differently there.